The sun was shining brightly over Lagos that Saturday, and the air smelled of roasted meat and laughter. It was the Okoro family's big barbecue, a celebration for Kayamika's recent wedding. Cars were parked along the street, music played from the speakers, and relatives filled the spacious compound with chatter and cheer. But as Amara's car pulled into the driveway, her heart sank a little. It had been 5 years since she last came home. 5 long years away, working, studying, and trying to build a life for herself abroad. Yet now, as she stepped out of her car and saw familiar faces, it felt like nothing had changed. The same stares, the same fake smiles, the same whispers behind her back. She could almost hear what they were saying. "She's back. Still not married?" Her mother, Mom Nkechi, spotted her from across the yard. "Ah, Amara, you finally came," she said, not hugging her, just giving a brief smile before turning back to beam at Kayamika and her new husband, Tchukwu. Mom Nkechi held Kayamika's hand proudly, flashing her daughter's wedding ring to every guest like it was a trophy. Amara smiled politely, but inside, her chest tightened. She could feel the old distance between her and her mother, the unspoken judgment that she was somehow incomplete without a husband. As her cousins laughed nearby and her sister posed for pictures, Amara stood quietly by the drinks table, wishing she hadn't come. It was supposed to be a happy family day, but deep down Amara knew this barbecue wasn't just about celebrating her sister's marriage. It was a stage for old wounds to resurface, and she was already feeling their sting. As Amara stood quietly at the family barbecue, watching her mother laugh proudly beside Kayamika, old memories began to surface, the kind that never really fade, no matter how many miles you travel or how many years pass. Growing up, Amara had always been the quiet one. She wasn't the loud, charming daughter who made people laugh or fluttered around the house helping her mother with chores. She was the one with her nose buried in books, the one who stayed up late studying by candlelight because the power often went out. While other girls talked about weddings and suitors, Amara dreamed about building something of her own, a career, a name, a purpose. But in the Okoro family, ambition wasn't something a woman was praised for. Her mother, Mom Nkechi, used to say it often, almost like a rule carved in stone. Marriage is a woman's biggest blessing. Without it, her life is empty. Amara would stay quiet, pretending those words didn't hurt, but they did. Every time Mom Nkechi said it, it felt like a reminder that Amara's dreams didn't count. Kayamika was always the golden child, pretty, social, and adored. If she wanted something, it appeared. When she wanted to go to a private university, Mom Nkechi and their father paid for everything without question. But when Amara got into a federal university, her parents told her they didn't have the money for her fees. So she found her own way. She tutored neighborhood kids, sold snacks on campus, even worked part-time at a printing shop to keep herself afloat. It was hard, but she did it. She graduated with honors. Yet no one at home seemed to care. Then came the breaking point. After graduation, Amara received a scholarship to study abroad, a dream she had prayed for. But when she told her mother, the joy she expected never came. Instead, Mom Nkechi frowned deeply and said, "You want to go abroad? To do what? Waste your youth chasing papers instead of finding a husband? Amara, you are becoming disobedient and barren with ambition." Those words hit her harder than she expected. Barren with ambition. She never forgot them. That night, Amara packed her bags quietly. She didn't argue, didn't cry in front of anyone. She just left, with a plane ticket, a heart full of pain, and a promise to herself. She would never again beg for approval that should have been freely given. Years later, standing at that barbecue, watching her mother beam at Kayamika's wedding ring, Amara felt that same ache return. All those years of struggle, the nights of loneliness, the victories she couldn't share, they came flooding back. To her family, she was still the daughter who chose books over love. But to herself, she was the girl who survived without anyone's help. And as much as it still hurt, she knew, she'd rather be misunderstood than small. The smell of grilled meat filled the air, children were laughing, and music played from the speakers. The Okoro family barbecue looked perfect from the outside, loud, cheerful, full of life. But for Amara, sitting at a corner table with a paper plate in hand, it felt like walking barefoot over old wounds. She tried to stay quiet, smiling politely whenever someone greeted her. But she could feel the curious eyes watching her. Aunties who used to pinch her cheeks as a child now whispered to each other, giving her that same pitiful look, the kind people give when they think your life didn't turn out as expected. Then, as if on cue, Mom Nkechi's voice rose above the noise. "Aha, my people, look at my Kayamika, a wife now. Beautiful, shining, just look at that ring." Everyone clapped and cheered. Kayamika giggled shyly, showing off her gold ring again for the 100th time. And then Mom Nkechi turned to Amara. Her tone changed, playful, but sharp like a blade wrapped in sugar. "And you, Amara," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, You're still nothing but books and loneliness, eh? The laughter came instantly, soft at first, then louder. A few guests looked away awkwardly, but no one spoke up. Amara froze. Her hand shook slightly as she tried to keep her plate from slipping. The grilled chicken suddenly tasted like ash in her mouth. Even Kayamika smirked, leaning close to her husband, Chukwu, whispering something that made him chuckle. Amara didn't need to hear the words, she already knew. The humiliation burned in her chest. Her cousin Obinna, sitting beside her, reached over and gently squeezed her shoulder. "Don't give them the satisfaction," he murmured quietly. His voice was kind, steady, but it only made the lump in her throat heavier. Mom Nkechi wasn't done. She clapped her hands dramatically. "All this education," she said, shaking her head, "and still no ring to show for it. Kayamika gave me grandchildren in my dreams already. Amara, when will you stop running after degrees and start running after love?" More laughter, the kind that stung. Amara forced a small smile, pretending it didn't bother her. But inside, she felt like a little girl again, the one who worked hard for everything, only to be told it wasn't enough. She could feel the heat rising behind her eyes, the weight of years of unspoken hurt pressing down. She wanted to walk away, to shout, to disappear. Anything but sit there while her mother turned her life into a public joke. But she stayed still, holding her breath, her nails digging into her palm under the table. If only they knew what she had become. If only they knew the woman behind the silence. But Amara said nothing. Not yet. She swallowed the pain, let the laughter echo around her, and told herself, one day, this laughter will choke them. As the laughter from her mother's cruel joke echoed around the yard, Amara sat frozen, her heart pounding. She stared down at her plate, pretending to pick at the food, but her thoughts were miles away. None of them, not her mother, not Kayamika, not the giggling aunties, knew the truth. They didn't know that the lonely daughter they mocked had built something extraordinary. That while they were busy talking about wedding rings and bridal dresses, Amara had been building her dream from scratch. When she left home years ago, she didn't just chase another degree. She worked day and night in Nairobi, starting as a junior assistant in a small delivery firm. The pay was little, the workload was heavy, and some days she could barely afford food. But she learned everything: operations, technology, leadership, negotiation. She saved every shilling she could. And slowly, she built her own company, SwiftFlow Africa, a tech logistics startup designed to help small businesses deliver goods across cities faster and cheaper. It started small, just a rented office, 3 delivery bikes, and 2 employees. But Amara believed in it with everything she had. She pitched, she partnered, she fought through countless rejections. And now, years later, the same company was valued in the millions. She had just signed a $25 million expansion deal with a major East African investment group. Her name was making quiet waves in business circles, though she never bragged about it. And yet, sitting there in her family's compound, listening to her mother call her nothing, Amara realized that success meant nothing if your own people refused to see you. She had come back to Lagos hoping for peace, hoping maybe, after all these years, her mother would simply welcome her home without judgment. But Mom Nkechi's words cut too deep. For a moment, Amara wondered if she had made a mistake, if keeping her success private had only given them more reason to mock her. But then she caught Obinna's eyes across the table, full of quiet support, and she knew. She didn't owe them an explanation. Still, there was a limit to silence. Her mother's laughter rang out again, followed by more jokes at her expense. This time, Amara didn't flinch. Something inside her had shifted, a calm, strong certainty that this would be the last time anyone treated her like a failure. She took a slow breath, feeling her heartbeat steady. The world didn't need to see her to know her worth, but her dignity demanded the truth be spoken. Not to show off, not to shame anyone, but to reclaim her voice, the one they tried to drown out with mockery. Amara looked around the yard, her face calm but her eyes sharper now. They thought she was just a quiet woman with nothing to show. But soon, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The party was in full swing. Music played louder, drinks flowed freely, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. Everyone except Amara. She sat quietly at the long table, trying to focus on her food, pretending not to hear the whispers or see the glances that came her way. Her mother was still at the center of attention, laughing, talking, showing off Kayamika and her new husband like they were royalty. Just when Amara thought the night couldn't get any worse, Mom Nkechi's voice boomed across the yard again. "Ah, my people, since Amara can't find a husband in the city, maybe I should find her one in the village." Laughter exploded. People clapped, some even whistled. It was all just a joke, but every word felt like a knife twisting in Amara's heart. She smiled weakly, but her eyes burned. Her throat tightened, and she felt her hand tremble under the table. She couldn't breathe in that space anymore, not with all those mocking faces around her. Without a word, she pushed her chair back and quietly stood up. The laughter continued behind her as she walked away, her heels clicking softly on the tiled floor. She found herself in the kitchen, the only quiet place in the house. The smell of grilled meat and spices still lingered, but for the first time that evening, she could finally let the tears fall. She leaned against the counter, wiping her eyes quickly before anyone could see. Then she heard voices. Kayamika's voice, clear, proud, and sharp, drifted in from the back door where a few guests were chatting. "Ah, don't mind Amara," Kayamika said with a laugh. "She's just jealous. She's been abroad all these years. But what did she bring back? Nothing. No husband, no job, no future. Always pretending she's so important." The guests laughed. Someone added, "But she's beautiful at least." Kayamika scoffed. "Beauty doesn't pay bills. She's just too proud to admit she failed." Amara's breath caught. For a moment, she couldn't move. Her own sister, the one she once helped with school projects, the one she defended countless times, was now laughing about her pain. Something inside her broke, but not in the way it used to. This time, the break wasn't weakness. It was clarity. The silence she'd carried for years, the patience she'd mistaken for peace. All of it ended right there in that kitchen. She straightened her shoulders and took a long, steady breath. Enough was enough. She had spent her whole life letting people talk over her, define her, shrink her. Not anymore. With her chin lifted and eyes fierce, Amara turned toward the doorway. The noise of the party grew louder again as she stepped back into the crowd, no longer as the quiet, pitted daughter, but as the woman ready to finally speak her truth. The laughter and music continued as Amara stepped back into the yard, but something about her presence changed the air. Her steps were calm, confident. Every click of her heels against the concrete seemed to command attention. People noticed her, one by one, their laughter fading as she reached the center of the compound. She picked up a glass from a nearby table and tapped it gently with a spoon. Ting, ting, ting. The sound cut through the noise, crisp and clear. Within seconds, the chatter died down. Everyone turned to look at her. Mama Nkechi, still fanning herself beside the grill, froze mid-lap. Amara smiled softly, her voice steady but warm. "Since everyone's been discussing my life tonight," she began, "I think it's only fair I clear a few things." The silence that followed was thick. Even the music stopped. Kayamika's smile faltered, and Mama Nkechi crossed her arms, confused but curious. Amara looked around at the faces, family, friends, neighbors. People who had known her since she was a child. "I didn't come here empty-handed," she said. "Actually, I came to make an announcement." She paused for a moment, letting her words settle. You could almost hear hearts beating. Then she continued, calm and clear. "The property we're standing on, this house, this compound, is now under my name. I bought it." The shock hit the crowd like thunder. Gasps rippled through the air. Someone dropped their cup. Mama Nkechi blinked rapidly, her fan frozen midair. "You what?" she stammered, her voice trembling. Amara nodded slowly, still composed. "Yes, Mama. The house was foreclosed by the bank 3 months ago because the debts weren't cleared. I found out from a friend at the bank before it went up for auction. So I bought it legally to save it." Whispers broke out immediately. "Foreclosed? She bought the house? From the bank?" Amara continued, her tone never rising. "I didn't buy it to shame anyone. I bought it because this is our family home, the place we grew up. I couldn't bear to see strangers living here, tearing down everything that held our memories. I thought I was helping." Mama Nkechi's face went pale. She opened her mouth but couldn't form a word. Kayamika stood frozen beside Tchukwu, who awkwardly looked away, clearly wishing he could disappear. Amara set her glass down gently. "So no, Mama," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm not the failure you keep calling me. I've worked hard, harder than anyone here knows. And today, the same daughter you called nothing is the reason this house still belongs to the Okoro family." No one spoke. The only sound was the faint crackle of the grill. Amara looked around once more, her eyes calm and shining, not with anger, but with truth. Then she smiled faintly and added, "Now, please, enjoy your meal." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a silence louder than any laughter. For a few long seconds after Amara's announcement, the entire compound stayed frozen. The laughter, the music, the clinking of plates, everything stopped. You could have heard a pin drop. Mama Nkechi's fan slipped from her hand, and Kayamika just stood there, her mouth slightly open. The pride that once filled the air was gone, replaced by shock. Finally, Kayamika found her voice. "Wait, you mean you own this house?" she stammered, eyes wide with disbelief. Amara turned to her, calm and unshaken. "Yes," she said softly, reaching into her purse and pulling out a neat brown envelope. "Here are the documents." She held them up, the stamped papers gleaming under the evening light. The property was listed for bank repossession. "I bought it in full. It's legally mine now." A murmur swept through the crowd. Aunties whispered behind their fans, uncles exchanged awkward glances, and a few neighbors sipped their drinks to hide their faces. The same people who laughed earlier now avoided eye contact. Amara looked at her mother, the woman who had just spent the evening mocking her. "Mama," she said quietly, "I didn't do this to embarrass you. I did it because I didn't want you all homeless. But maybe respect should be mutual." The words hit like a slap. Mom Nkechi's fake laughter finally stopped. Her eyes darted around, searching for something to say, but her lips just trembled. Her once proud posture shrank, shoulders sagging as the truth settled in. Kayamika tried to recover, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You could have told us," she muttered weakly. Amara met her gaze, her voice steady. "Would you have listened? The moment I walked in, you called me jealous and jobless. You laughed at me in front of guests. You all decided who I was before even asking." She took a breath, her voice soft but full of power. "You called me nothing, but everything you stand on today belongs to the nothing daughter." The sentence hung in the air like fire. People shifted uncomfortably. No one dared to laugh now. Even the wind seemed to pause. Mama Nkechi's eyes glistened. For the first time that evening, her voice cracked. "Amara," she whispered, almost pleading, but Amara gently raised a hand, not in anger but in finality. "I'm not angry, Mama," she said. "I just wanted you to see me, truly see me." Her gaze swept across the yard, landing on every relative who had once mocked her. "You taught me that worth comes from rings and titles. I learned that it comes from purpose and peace." The crowd stayed silent as Amara set her glass down on the table. "Thank you all for coming," she said with a small, graceful smile. "Dinner's still warm. Enjoy." Then she turned and walked toward her car, her steps slow but steady. Tears welled in her eyes, glistening under the golden sunset, but she didn't let them fall. Her heart was heavy, yet proud. Behind her, whispers filled the yard again. But this time, no one was laughing. The morning after the barbecue, Amara woke up to the sound of loud knocking on her hotel door. Still in her robe, she sighed, already guessing who it was. When she opened the door, there stood Mama Nkechi, her face swollen from crying, her wrapper tied carelessly, eyes filled with desperation. "Amara, please, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. It wasn't the commanding tone Amara had known all her life. It was soft, broken, and almost childlike. Amara stepped aside silently, letting her in. The hotel room felt too quiet, too clean for the kind of storm about to unfold. Mama Nkechi sat on the edge of the bed, her hands fidgeting with her scarf. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence carried all the words they had never said. Finally, Mama Nkechi exhaled shakily. "I know what I did last night was wrong," she began. "But you have to understand, I didn't mean for things to get this bad." Amara folded her arms, her expression unreadable. "You didn't mean to mock me in front of the whole family, or you didn't mean to lose the house?" Mama Nkechi winced, her eyes lowering to the floor. "I lost the house because I took loans for Kayamika's wedding," she confessed, her voice cracking. "The decorator, the catering, the hall. I wanted it to be perfect. I thought you'd never come back, and I just wanted one daughter I could be proud of before I die." Amara's chest tightened. The words hung in the air like smoke. "You could have been proud of both," she whispered, her voice trembling. Mama Nkechi's eyes filled with tears, spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't see it then," she said, sobbing. "I thought being a good mother meant pushing you toward marriage, not seeing how strong you already were. You worked so hard, Amara. I was too blinded by what people would say." Amara sat down beside her, the distance between them finally closing after years of silence. She reached for her mother's hand, the same hand that once slapped her for talking back, now shaking with guilt. "Mama," she said softly, "I didn't need you to be proud of my success. I just needed you to love me for who I am." They both broke down then, years of pain melting into tears. For the first time in a decade, they held each other, no pride, no insults, just raw truth. When the crying stopped, Mama Nkechi looked up, her face tired but lighter. "Can you forgive me?" she asked quietly. Amara hesitated. Her heart wanted to say yes, but her wounds weren't ready. She squeezed her mother's hand. "I forgive you, Mama," she said slowly, "but healing will take time." Mama Nkechi nodded, understanding. There were no more words left, just the quiet relief of two hearts finally beginning to mend. As her mother left the room, Amara stood by the window, watching the morning sun rise over Lagos. For the first time in years, she felt something close to peace. Not complete, but enough to begin again. A few weeks later, the once lively Okoro family house stood quiet, its walls tired and scarred from years of memories, good and bad. But soon, everything began to change. Trucks came with paint, furniture, and boxes of supplies. The faded signboard at the gate came down, and in its place a new one appeared, the Okoro Women's Resource Center. Amara walked through the compound one afternoon, watching workers paint the walls a warm cream color. The same compound where she'd once been mocked and humiliated now buzzed with energy and hope. Instead of gossip and insults, there was laughter and chatter, women learning new skills, young girls reading books, and single mothers sewing clothes at the back room. Her vision was simple but powerful, to create a safe place for women who'd been overlooked, dismissed, or abandoned, just like she once was. She used her savings to fund scholarships, business training, and mentorship programs for single mothers and underprivileged girls. Slowly, the center grew into something much bigger than anyone expected. Every week, new faces arrived, women carrying babies, young girls with notebooks, widows hoping for a second chance. And every week, Amara was there to greet them, to remind them that their past didn't define their future. When a journalist came to interview her, the story quickly spread online. Sitting in the same garden where she once stood humiliated, Amara smiled and said, "Because healing begins where pain once lived." The reporter's eyes softened. That one line became the headline across social media. The daughter they mocked now owns it all. Videos of the center flooded TikTok and Instagram. Women sharing their stories of transformation, young girls receiving scholarships, and Amara teaching classes on self-worth and business. People across the country were moved by her journey. But the most touching part wasn't the fame. It was seeing Mama Nkechi walk through the gates one Saturday morning, not as a guest of honor, but as a volunteer. She tied her wrapper firmly, grabbed a broom, and began sweeping the courtyard like any other helper. At first, everyone stared. The same woman who once called her daughter nothing, now cleaned and served tea to visitors with quiet humility. When someone asked why she volunteered, she simply said, "Because I'm proud of her, and because it's never too late to do better." Amara watched from the window, tears filling her eyes. There was no bitterness left in her heart, just gratitude. Life had come full circle. The Okoro family home, once a place of rivalry and shame, had turned into a home of hope and second chances. Every brick, every wall told a story of healing. And as laughter echoed across the compound once again, Amara smiled to herself. She had not just rewritten her story, she had built a legacy. The grand opening day finally arrived. The once broken Okoro family house now looked completely new. Colorful banners fluttered, the scent of fresh flowers filled the air, and the sound of soft music played in the background. People from all over the city gathered to celebrate the official launch of the Okoro Women's Resource Center. Cameras flashed, reporters stood ready, and dozens of women, the same ones Amara had helped, smiled proudly in their new uniform. Amara stood on the small stage, dressed in a simple but elegant white dress. Her eyes scanned the crowd until they found Mama Nkechi and Kayamika sitting quietly in the front row. They weren't talking or laughing this time, just watching her, their faces full of emotion and pride they couldn't hide. For a moment, Amara felt the sting of old memories, but this time it didn't hurt. It just reminded her how far she'd come. She took a deep breath, walked up to the microphone, and smiled. The crowd hushed instantly. Her voice was calm but strong as she said, "To every daughter who's ever been told she's not enough, remember, your worth isn't defined by anyone's laughter." The audience broke into thunderous applause. Some people stood up cheering, others wiped away tears. Mama Nkechi pressed a hand to her chest, her eyes glistening, and Kayamika clapped the loudest. As the applause faded, Amara stepped down from the stage. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange. She looked around at the house, the women, her family, and felt peace wash over her. She wasn't living to prove anything anymore. She was living freely, as the woman she was always meant to be.